If you've done office hours with me in the last few months, you may have stumbled upon Superpeer, which is the platform we've been using. Superpeer announced a $2 million round in early 2020 and a follow-up $8 million round in November. And our guest for today's video is Devrim Yasar, the CEO. We had a fantastic conversation a few weeks ago when we covered how he raised his first money and his experience raising capital in the US as a foreign founder. I'm using some of the interview fragments in this video, but if you want to listen to the full version, you can do so in our Company Forensics podcast. But first, I want to tell you how and why we came to use Superpeer. Ever since we launched Slidebean, I've set aside some time to talk to our customers. At first, by jumping on chat support, eventually via office hours. At some point, all of our paying customers received an automatic email their first month offering them free office hours with me. And these calls were super valuable. It helped me understand their pain points and shape that into the product. It also helped establish a connection. There were human beings behind this product, not just chat support. When we started seeing success on YouTube, those calls started getting out of hand. I was booked for months in advance and it was killing my productivity. Also, people sometimes missed their calls, which created gaps in my schedule. So we decided to experiment and started charging money for these calls. And the easiest way to solve that then was with Calendly. Calendly is a scheduling platform and they allow you to connect your Stripe account and charge money for the call. It's not pretty, it's not sexy or cool, it's not startup-y. It just got the job done. It was cold and impersonal. And then you had to go to a different platform to actually have the call. And this is the opportunity that Devrim saw.
My prompt was, in that 2019, I said, maybe I should learn a little machine learning. So I watched someone on YouTube 10 hours long. And then I'm doing my project and I got stuck. And I couldn't call that person. I now need to find someone who knows machine learning. I need to tell them like, hey, here's the 10 hours of course that I just followed. Mm-hmm. And they need to know where I'm stuck and then just unstuck me from there. Versus that person on YouTube is having ad revenues. Why not? I could call him and then pay him $500 because that was how important that question was to me. Mm-hmm. I called Fatih, my co-founder, and I said, Fatih, from coding, if I were to pick a person to do another startup with, you would be one of them. So here's my two ideas. One is the Superpeer and the second one was different. And then he liked the Superpeer a lot. He said, this could really work because he's a YouTuber. He has videos. He, constantly has these inbounds like, hey, can I talk to you? I have a question. Can I talk to you? I have a question. So how do you respond to that?
Now, two key takeaways here on recruiting co-founders. Both founders experienced the problem firsthand. One from the customer side and one from the YouTuber side. And also, they decided together on the idea that made the most sense. It's not a, hey, you developer, come code this idea for me. All right, so let's move to fundraising now. Devrim, like many of you watching, does not hail from Silicon Valley. So here's a masterclass, really a masterclass on raising money in the US as a foreign founder.
I moved to the States in 2008. So when I came to New York, I actually thought exactly that. Okay, I have zero network here. I need to build it from scratch. The first job I had was through Craigslist. There was a project that I really liked, scaleb.com. I don't think it exists. But Rob wanted to build a website, a web application that puts numbers into perspective. So he said, when we say 800,000 acres of land, of forest is burned in California, we don't know how much land that is. Is it 4 times Texas? Is it 5 times San Francisco? When we say it's 1 kilometer, is it like 4 Empire States or 2 Eiffel Towers? We don't. He wanted to create this JavaScript widget that underlines of those things. When you're reading a blog post, when you see a big number, you will hover over it and then it will show you what it is. Like you could then put it in perspective. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. And then I was paid like $500 a week just helping that project. I just loved it. And then my brother and I were working on coding on the side. And one day I knew in my head, if I ever wanted to get investments in the United States, I needed to prove myself. I needed to build a reputation where an investor would just read my name and then it's okay, this dude checks out. He's not just a foreigner, just came into this country. He has a network. So it always helps. So then one day I remember my brother sent me another Craigslist post that he said, they're looking for you. And that was local response. And I read the job description. I'm like, yeah, that clearly is me. And I went and met Nihal. and I became his CTO for the next 2 years.
Devrim's first company failed, but many times a failed company translates into experience and into network.
Working as a CTO, and my back then CEO is now my lead investor from New York. So we worked 2 years together, and then I had this idea of making developer tools easier, and that unfortunately has failed. So we spent 7 years on that. I raised $20 million, and then we tried our best. And I think it was a good product. It was a good idea. It was a little ahead of its time. Right now, GitHub is doing it with code spaces. There are a bunch of other people are still at that problem, so they're going to fix it one day. But in 2019, I was thinking about, what am I going to do next? What's next for me? Having failed isn't really the best psychology for a founder. It wasn't a good experience for me, especially in the last 2-3 years. It was, there were like numerous acquisition offers were coming in, and that wasn't happening next time. And I had to manage a board, and I had a board member, etc. There was like so much stuff, but nothing made me burn any bridges with anybody that I was working with. So I care about that a lot. So like sometimes we will come work for the companies that I founded or other companies that they work for, and then when they go out, they start bad-mouthing the company, bad-mouthing the founder. That doesn't work for your network. I think building network actually demands us to actually talk about building a network, because most people that I see, even they want to build a network with me, they send a cold inbound email or text or Twitter, and they don't really value that individual connection. To me, network, someone says, go talk to Devrim, and if that means something, if that person doesn't do those recommendations all often, I think the one word that I would recommend to everybody, and I use this for myself, is integrity. Always show up when you need to and be there for other people, and just make sure that your words carry some weight. Okay, it's life. Sometimes things happen, sometimes things don't happen. To build the network that worked for me the way that it did, it was because of my integrity. I think that is allowed to say. Like I've never wronged anybody in the past. Yes, I have fired people, I have let people go, or I have had those moments of a failed startup, like with the board, and you managed that board, but I still have great relationship with them because they understand that I did my best, and there was nothing wrong with the books, nothing wrong with my ethics. That's what mattered. And now the next time that I want to do something, what I've heard from others, that they were talking like whatever Devrim does, whatever he's going to do. And that was, it warmed my heart. Like I was like, wow, I built this. If that's how I am known among those circles, I was really proud of myself that I have had that.
Network was key to Superpeer's first round of funding.
All stuff came together, and Superpeer kind of took off on its own. I went to a holiday party of that investor that I just told you about, and Devrim is whatever it is that you're doing, just take 25K. I didn't even tell him this idea. He was like, you're going to do something great. I know it. And you're going to do something amazing. Please let us in. And I'm like, okay. He's like almost like family. We worked together. We had all these experiences together. And I said, okay, I'll take an angel check from you. And he goes and tells his partners. And then next week he calls me and then says, Devrim, what about 750? Because it's also very into it. Tom is is very into it. We didn't have the intention of raising, like right now we are at $10 million. Even the second round came to us. I didn't need to build a deck for it.
Let's carry on. Superpeer had a chicken-egg challenge. They tailored to influencers, so they needed to build credibility around their offering to get other influencers to join.
It's a chicken and egg problem. Is you can look at it from multiple perspectives, and you know that I love your channel, Startup Forensics, and then you just see it from all angles. There's a user component. Who uses your product first because they become your voice? Who tweets about your product first and second and third, and how others perceive you? I think we should play to 5 seconds attention span now, and maybe it's 1 second now. You get on Product Hunt and people look at your website. In 1 second, they see a face or they see a title, and then they immediately categorize you. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I think that's a very natural human behavior. literally landing pages took the longest time in our case because I really want to capture that little bit of an attention span. Mm-hmm. I have a couple of rules that I share with our design team that do not use copy. We are connecting people or democratizing knowledge or revolutionizing X, or because people tend to use those words. So we started with Chris Messina, which was like we ended up building a product for him. Chris Messina is an old friend of mine.
Okay.
But he reached out to me because I changed my Twitter bio. So it turns out that he's using a program that monitors if someone changes Twitter bio. That means that they are working on a new project, and then he just sends them a note. So I changed my bio, and around the time, I'm like, it would be nice to actually launch some product hunt. And he reaches out to me. He says, Devrim, you're working on Superpeer. It looks very cool. I created my account. Do you want me to hunt you on product hunt? And I'm like, dude, that's very cool. Yeah, I was like literally thinking about him. So there was a little bit of a synchronicity there. And he also became our top earner. He launched it on his blog post. He's closing to 6 figures on Superpeer. Yeah, everybody on Twitter kind of loved the product because of the reasons that you outlined, because a lot of people want to have those one-on-ones, but it's so hard to manage them. There are a couple of things, psychological things that was being done wrong in other platforms. I think I've solved them in a very mindful way, like from the heart, so to speak. One of them was, I said to myself, this one-on-one call, it should be as meaningful as to the other. So if I want to reach out to you and I want to pay you for your time, you shouldn't go out of that call saying that, oh, here's 30 minutes that I'm not going to get back. Mm-hmm. Versus, how do we make sure that people who call have a question, have that actual thing? Like, you don't want to knock on Michael Jordan's door and say, hey, could you talk to me about basketball? That's not the interaction Michael Jordan is looking for. But would I not pay Michael Jordan $25,000 to just talk to him about a brand that I want to launch? That would be an interesting conversation for Michael Jordan. Like, he might actually have the conversation even without the money. But if I am willing to pay that amount, that means that I value this conversation.
So I was able to snatch superpeer.com/Kaya, which is a first. I never get that username. But we also have a network of investors and other startup founders that are available for office hours on our Slidebean Expert Network. Yes, powered by Superpeer. In our full interview, we also covered Devrim's transition from CTO to CEO, from his first company to this one, how they figured out pricing, and some more of Devrim's philosophy as a founder. Be sure to check that out on our podcast. We'll see you next week.